Kai Mercer always thought the world ran on logic, until the night he found his own name printed on a government document that didn't exist, stamped with a red mark that meant he was already classified as observed. I never thought curiosity could be dangerous until the day I stumbled across it. It started as a routine scroll through obscure forums, the kind of corners of the internet where nobody knew my name and nobody would care if I disappeared. Late at night, when the world outside was silent, I came across a post that did not make sense, an invitation hidden in lines of cryptic code and random symbols, something about seeing the truth and waking up before it's too late. I told myself it was just another internet game, a prank someone had cleverly hidden, but my stomach tightened as I clicked the link. The site loaded a blank page, but my screen flickered as if it had a pulse. Then words appeared slowly, typing themselves across the monitor. They watch, they decide, they are closer than you think. I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding, trying to convince myself it was just a gimmick. But the air in the room felt heavier, as if the walls themselves were breathing. The quiet hum of my computer suddenly sounded like whispers in my ears. I couldn't tell if it was the building settling or something far worse. That night, sleep became impossible. Shadows seemed to move in corners where they shouldn't exist. I told myself it was my imagination, the after effects of staring at a screen too long. But the unease wouldn't leave. I could feel eyes on me, even when I was alone, and every small noise made my pulse jump. My apartment, once familiar and safe, had transformed into a cage, walls closing in, floors creaking with phantom steps. The next morning, I noticed something strange on my phone. A photo I hadn't taken had appeared in my camera roll. It was my apartment, but from outside, the angle that could only have been taken through my own window. My heart raced, my hands shaking as I tried to delete it, but my phone wouldn't respond. Panic surged through me. I scrolled through the gallery frantically, but there was only that single image, as if it had been waiting for me to see. Then I noticed it. In the window of my apartment, the reflection was wrong. A figure stood there, silent, motionless, staring straight at me. I blinked. My apartment was empty. No one should have been there. Yet the shadow remained, tall and still, watching. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, frozen by a terror that seemed to pulse through the walls themselves. I tried to rationalize it. Perhaps it was a trick of light, a reflection of myself in the early morning sun, but the figure didn't resemble me. Its posture, the stillness, it was something else, something alive, waiting, patient. My chest tightened as I realized it had been standing there long enough for me to notice, long enough to imprint its presence into my memory. The ordinary, familiar world I had known had cracked, revealing something dark beneath, something that watched silently, waiting for the right moment to step closer. By nightfall, the sensation of being observed had grown unbearable. Even the air felt thick, as if it carried whispers I couldn't understand. My walls, my furniture, even the shadows themselves seemed to have eyes. Something had crossed into my life, unseen yet undeniable. I wasn't alone. And as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the feeling that the figure in the window hadn't moved. It had merely vanished from sight, leaving only the chilling certainty that it had never really left at all. Sleep became a rare thing after that first night. Even when my eyes closed from exhaustion, my mind stayed awake, alert, scanning the dark for shapes that did not belong. I started hearing faint sounds, scratches in the wall, light tapping beneath the floorboards, as if something lived behind the surfaces I trusted. Every creak of the building made my muscles tense. I tried telling myself I was still in control, that paranoia was just a side effect of not sleeping, but a deeper part of me knew I had already stepped onto a path I couldn't leave. I stopped turning lights off at night, desperate to see everything around me. That only made things worse. The light didn't protect me. It revealed more. I noticed tiny holes drilled near the ceiling corners, holes I had never seen before. I found thin wires tucked behind furniture, too neatly placed to be accidental. I had lived in that apartment for years. I would have noticed them before. Someone had been here. Someone had arranged all of this without me ever hearing a door open. That realization sent a deeper chill through my bones than the shadow in the window ever had. Days began blending together. I barely left the apartment, terrified that whoever was watching might follow if I stepped outside. I sat at my desk, scrolling endlessly, looking for any sign that others had experienced the same thing, proof that I wasn't losing my mind. I found threads of people talking about feeling watched, about maps delivered to their homes, about them. But every comment section ended the same way. Accounts deleted, users gone, threads locked as if erased by something outside the platform. It was like reading the trail of people who had vanished one by one. One afternoon, I discovered something new beneath my front door, a thin envelope with no name, no seal. Inside was a folded sheet of paper covered in circles, lines, strange markings that looked mathematical but foreboding. There was one red circle among the black ones. I recognized the location at its center. It was my building. Something tightened painfully in my chest as I traced the ink with trembling fingers. This wasn't random. This was planned. I was marked. I wanted to tear the map apart, burn it, destroy any sign of it, but something held me back. Maybe part of me believed destruction would only trigger whatever came next. I slid it into a drawer instead, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. Why mark me? Had clicking the link been the beginning, or was I already chosen long before that night? The thought that this might not be new, that this might have been happening longer than I realized, made my stomach twist. That night, as I lay in bed pretending to sleep, I heard something that didn't sound like pipes or floor settling. It was breathing. Slow, deliberate, steady breathing coming from the wall beside my head, as if something waited there just inches away, hidden by nothing but drywall. I held my breath, and the sound continued without changing pace. Proof it didn't belong to me. The breathing stayed there all night, patient, calm, as if whatever was behind the wall already knew it didn't need to rush. I stopped asking myself whether I was being watched and began asking how long it had been happening before I noticed. That shift in thinking made the fear heavier, deeper, like something settling into my bones. My phone started acting strangely, flickering, opening apps on its own, typing unfinished messages I never wrote. Notifications arrived with no sender. When I tried turning it off, the screen lit back up on its own, as if refusing to die. It no longer felt like a tool in my hand. It felt like a window someone else was looking through. I began keeping track of everything, every sound, every change, every object slightly out of place. I wrote notes in a notebook, but even that started to feel unsafe. Pages disappeared. Entire entries I knew I had written were gone without any sign of tearing. Someone had touched my things. Someone had moved through my space while I slept. I checked the locks again and again, but locks are pointless when whoever comes in doesn't need a key. One evening, when the paranoia reached a point that made my skin crawl, I forced myself to leave the apartment just to breathe unfamiliar air. I walked fast and without direction, head down, trying not to look at reflections or faces. The city felt wrong, too quiet, too staged. Every person I passed looked like they were pretending not to see me. Every window felt like an eye. When I reached an intersection, I noticed a van parked across the street. No logo. No windows. Engine running. I stood frozen, feeling its presence like a pulse. Even though no one stepped out, I knew the van was there for me. I hurried back, heart pounding, legs shaking. But when I reached my building and glanced up at my window, I saw a light on that I knew I had turned off before leaving. Someone had been inside while I was gone. Instead of rushing in, I waited in the hallway outside my door, listening. Silence. Too much silence. I opened the door slowly, each second stretching out painfully, expecting to find someone inside. The space was empty, or at least it appeared to be. Then I saw it, a new object placed on my table. A small black USB drive that hadn't been there before. No note, no explanation. Just waiting for me. I didn't touch it. I backed away from it like it was alive. That was when I realized the truth. Whoever was doing this didn't just want to watch me. They wanted me to participate, to follow instructions, to take the next step they had planned for me. I unplugged my computer to avoid the pull of curiosity, but later that night while I lay in bed, the monitor turned on by itself. The screen glowed across the room, bright and unnatural. A single phrase appeared on the black background, written in white letters that seemed to pulse. "You are not a victim. You were chosen." My blood ran cold. The screen did not flicker or fade. The message did not change. It waited, like something breathing in digital form, aware that I had read it. And as I stared at those words, I realized with sick certainty that whatever had chosen me was not going to stop. Not now, not ever. I didn't touch the USB drive for 2 days, but avoiding it only made the tension grow heavier. The apartment felt like a sealed trap, and the longer I stayed inside it, the more I felt myself unraveling. I covered the cameras I had found, unplugged every device, blocked the vents, tried to close every possible point of entry, and yet the feeling of presence never left. I began to feel watched not from one direction, but from everywhere at once, like hundreds of invisible eyes pressed against the walls. Sleep became a blur of half-dreams. Whenever my body finally shut down, I woke to small changes. A chair moved an inch, a cabinet slightly open, a drawer I swore I had closed now ajar. Each morning I found new proof that someone had been inches from me while I slept. It no longer felt like surveillance. It felt like preparation. They were getting closer. On the third night, the power went out. Not in the whole building, just my unit. The hallway lights outside my door still glowed. My neighbors' televisions still flickered through cracks beneath their doors. Only my apartment was swallowed in blackout. I stood still in the dark, every muscle locked, listening. The silence was alive. Then, slowly, something tapped 3 times from inside the wall behind me. Not random, not mechanical, intentional. I grabbed a flashlight and turned it on with shaking hands. The beam cut through the darkness and landed on the USB drive on the table. It looked like bait. It looked like the answer to a question I didn't want answered. But something inside me, maybe fear, maybe desperation, finally broke. I plugged it into an old laptop not connected to the internet. The screen turned white for a few seconds, then a folder appeared. Inside it was a single video file with no name. I opened it, and my lungs froze. The footage showed my apartment. Days, maybe weeks of recordings stitched together. Angles from corners, from vents, from behind mirrors. It showed me sleeping, eating, scrolling on my phone, pacing, crying. I watched myself live my life like an animal in a glass cage. But the worst part wasn't seeing myself. It was seeing what moved behind me in the footage. Figures. Tall, blurred, slow-moving shapes that appeared only when I wasn't looking. They stood behind me while I slept. They leaned over me while I sat at my desk. One of them hovered inches from my face one night while I tossed in bed, its head tilted as if listening to my breathing. My body went cold in a way I had never felt before. These weren't recordings from outside. They were inside with me. They had been inside for a long time. The video ended with a final timestamp from the night before. In the last frame, I watched myself lying in bed, unaware, while something crouched under the mattress, its hand slipping out toward my ankle. The recording ended in static, leaving the last implication hanging in the dark air like a noose. I couldn't stay there anymore. After watching that footage, every surface of my apartment felt contaminated by their presence. I packed a bag without thinking, grabbed my wallet, and left in the middle of the night. I didn't look back as I locked the door, as if locking it could trap what was inside. The hallway felt colder than usual, as though something had followed me as far as it was allowed. I descended the stairs instead of using the elevator, terrified something would trap me inside. When I reached the street, the air felt thin and unreal, like a set built for a scene I was meant to walk into. I didn't go to a friend's place. I couldn't risk dragging this thing into someone else's life. I checked into a cheap motel miles away, paying cash, choosing a room far from the entrance. The space was small, plain, and for a moment it brought me the first sense of quiet I'd felt in weeks. I turned off my phone, removed the battery, shoved it in a drawer. I blocked the peephole and pushed furniture against the door. Only then did I allow myself to breathe. For hours I lay still, listening, waiting for any sign that I hadn't escaped. The silence began to calm me just enough that exhaustion finally pulled me under. When I opened my eyes again, it was morning. Sunlight slipped through the curtains. Everything seemed normal, almost peaceful, until I saw the motel notepad on the nightstand. A single page had been torn off. In its place was a fresh sheet with writing on it. Not a message. A drawing. The same symbol I had seen on the envelope map, drawn in black ink with a red circle around the location I now occupied. My throat tightened until I could barely swallow. They had found me easily, faster than I expected. I hadn't escaped anything. I had only confirmed that there was no place to run. I sat on the floor shaking, trying to understand the scale of whatever this was. It wasn't one person. It wasn't one group. It was something bigger, something that spread like a network, something that already owned every space I entered. I forced myself to leave again, moving to yet another city, another cheap room, changing transportation, staying offline. It didn't matter. Every time I arrived somewhere new, something let me know I had been followed. A folded map on a table, a shadow in a reflection, a symbol carved into wood. I didn't need cameras to see it anymore. I could feel them before anything appeared. Weeks passed like this, running, relocating, watching reality thin around me. Eventually, I stopped telling myself I was trying to escape. I realized I was being herded, moved like a piece on a board I was never meant to understand. I started wondering if the twist was never that they were watching me, but that I had been part of them from the beginning, unaware, fulfilling a role I didn't know existed. Tonight, I am in another unfamiliar room, writing these words by hand with no devices near me. The air is still, but the pressure in it is the same. I feel them close again, closer than before, as if something is about to shift. I don't know what happens next. Maybe I disappear. Maybe I become like the others I saw in the photographs. Maybe I wake up tomorrow and none of this feels foreign anymore. But the part that terrifies me most isn't that they will reach me. It is the possibility that when they do, I won't resist. That I will recognize them. That I will understand everything. And that the moment I understand will be the moment I stop feeling afraid at all.